Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 15th special meeting of Council. And I'm reminded of the works of Shakespeare, Beware the Ides of March, which is tonight. The City of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. First of all, what I want to tell everybody is tonight's going to be very informal. There'll be plenty of opportunity for everybody to ask questions in the audience. And if need be, if there's questions that Council are asking, and some of those answers may come from some of you in the audience, if you put up your hand, I'm going to be treating that as very informal, but again, quiet and respectable and calm, cool, and collected. So on that note, I'm going to turn the meeting. No, I can't do that. I've got other things to do first. Mrs. Lovegrove, could you please provide us with your presentation regarding the draft final 2017 to 2021 municipal budget and financial plan? And I want to point out to everybody that there's another meeting on March 29th, so whatever happens tonight will be brought back by staff to review again on the 29th, and perhaps even after that, who knows. So Mrs. Lovegrove, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Welcome everyone to the budget presentation for the 2017 to 2021 draft financial plan. We're going to be looking at all three funds, and in each of the funds we'll look at the adjustments since the provisional budget, the 2016 carry forwards, the budget changes to the 2017-2021 financial plan, and to take a look at the projected accumulated surplus for each of the funds. So we'll start with the general fund. In the general fund, there's been no changes in the tax rate since we presented the provisional budget. They remain at 4% for 2017 to 2021. We've added the 2016 carry forward projects, we've added new capital projects, and we have revised the reserve fund opening balances. We'd just like to bring your attention to the changes from the 2017 to 2021 provisional plan in the accumulated surplus balances. With the actual accumulated surplus opening balance has now been calculated at $8.5 million. We previously estimated the accumulated surplus balance to be $6 million. So that's an increase in our accumulated surplus balance of just over $2 million. The carry forward projects, for Council's purposes, these projects have been listed in your handout that you have, so I won't be going over them all individually. For the general fund, the total operating carry forwards are $340,050. Capital has a lot of different projects in each of the areas, admin, fire department, parks, operations. And the total capital is $5,371,831. So if you have any questions on any of the particular ones, we can certainly address them. The changes to the budget, this again was in Council's handout. We've had some changes to the emergency program. Part of that is cost shared between the RDN and Qualicum Beach, and that's reflected in the first line under emergency program revenues. Library contract has gone up, and that's also reflected in the expense line as well. They're a net zero. Bylaw enforcement's had some new training expenses. Parking control, they removed the commissioners. There's no longer a contract for those. Also in the bylaw program and bylaw enforcement and emergency program, there was a duplicated salaried position, which we have pointed out and we have removed. So that has reduced the cost on that. Again, the emergency program is doing some cost sharing items with the RDN and Qualicum Beach, as well as some things on their own as well, so they're listed there. And City Hall, the cost of managing this building, we've increased by $5,000, which with our extended area that we have now, there is a little bit more costs coming in, so we've made that to actual. And in the provisional budget, we did have $15,000 for renos in the admin area. That has also been removed. So with the capital is mostly changes to either to move out projects to future years. The revenues that are associated with the projects are also shown reflected, and those are either the DCC revenues or funding from the gas tax. So we have put them in the appropriate years. There was a new project, which is the storm sewer component of McKinnon Harnish to Hearst, and that is an amount of $414,000. In addition to the adjustments and the changes, we did have some spending packages come forward since the last presentation that we had. In parks, we have an urban forest reforestation spending package. This is completely dependent on a grant from BC Hydro. If BC Hydro does not provide us with a grant for $7,500, this project will not be done. The planning department is also asking for a summer student for the years 2017 and 2018. The planning department is also looking for a new building inspector, hopefully for 4 months in this year, and then full-time going forward. And along with that building inspector, they would like to request a new truck for that building inspector. And the last new spending package that came forward was one to replace water park equipment. This was in the provisional budget, but at a much lower rate. New legislation requirements have substantially increased the cost for us, and it is reflected in the spending package that you were provided with. There is also an offset donation from the Lions Club of $100,000 for this project.
Also, we should notify everyone, we found out today through staff that the water park will remain open this summer. That's correct. So it won't be closed this summer. Hopefully the work will start in the fall, so we get all the work done for next year. But this is a requirement, as you said, by the Island Health folk, and so we're complying with that. But luckily, we don't have to shut it down this summer. Thank you.
We have some late budget changes that are not yet included. We're still waiting for the final update of BC assessed values. They will probably not be given to us until the end of March. Other items to be considered for this budget. The Parksville Downtown Business Association is requesting $70,000 a year for 3 years for the wayfinding system. We'd also like to request one RCMP office.
I'd just like to point out, I did get an email today from somebody, but the wayfinding system was brought to an earlier budget meeting about, what, a month ago or 2 months ago? That was done several weeks ago anyway, so this is not the first time this is appearing.
There's also been a request for additional RCMP officers, hopefully one for half a year this year, and then 2 new ones for going forward. So the one from this year would then be full-time next year, plus an additional RCMP officer for 2018. And also, there's a request for a donation from the Military Service Recognition Book, for, I think from the Royal Canadian Legion, if I'm correct. These items are not included in the totals in this budget and are to be discussed here and for further consideration.
How much is we gave a donation last year for the Military Service Recognition Book. How much was that? There's no amount there. Was there an amount requested?
No.
Anybody recall? I know it's not a large amount, but it was for an ad in this particular book, and we supported it last year. Anyway, yes, do you remember what that was?
I could find the specifics, but it depended what we chose. So that was the thing. There's a fee attached if it was a quarter page, a quarter page, a half page, and so on. I think previously it was a quarter page ad that we had, perhaps. roughly $400, somewhere in that area.
Okay, we'll deal with that. I think we're going to stop at this point in time, and I'll go to council to start the discussion on these items, because these are new items, and we haven't discussed the details of these. So, regarding the PDBA wayfinding system, 2017 to 2020. Who wants to comment? Any comments on that from anybody on council? Do you want to lead that off? No, okay, so do you want to make a question or comments? Okay, go ahead.
First off, I'd just like to say I certainly support the concept of a wayfinding system, and was very impressed with the presentation that was given, the workshop that we had earlier. I do feel that there may be a need, though, for our staff, particularly engineering and planning, I would imagine, to be involved in knowing a little more about the details, what the rollout would be. I just feel like we need a little more information, or even a lot more information, to know what that price tag would involve. And particularly as they are, we have things going on in the city, Corfield, Jensen, possible adjustments to 19A over time. I think all of those need to be brought into the conversation in order to decide what that rollout would look like, what the phasing would be, and the time frame. So that's a little bit of my concern. I just think that I'd like to support the concept, but I think our staff needs to be involved with the PDBA on the specifics.
Any other comments from members of council? Councillor Oates?
Thank you, Your Worship. I echo the concerns of Councillor Beale, and I also echo my support of the concept. My concern is if we refer this to staff for comment on any additional costs associated with it, would they have the ability to respond in time for us before we finalize our budget? Because I know it's time sensitive for the PDBA as well, and I know time is an issue. So I believe that there does need to be some more. There needs to be some consultation with our staff. When I inquired earlier this week last week maybe, about what consultation had been done with our staff with respect to the implementation of the plan. And I don't believe any formal consultation has been done, so that would give me a greater level of comfort knowing that the $210,000 we're being asked to approve doesn't come with additional infrastructure costs or otherwise impact any plans that we have with respect to transportation master plans or parks master plans or anything like that. So I would like to see that happen as well. I'd support a motion to refer it to staff, but I would like some comment from staff if with respect to timelines should that motion be successful.
Mrs. Comas, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, and I'm going to get Mrs. Comas to identify who in staff can answer that.
I can wait while you speak to Mrs. Comas, and then I'll make my comments.
So who on staff, Mrs. Comas? Mr. Figuera, Mr. Squire, yourself? Who wants to deal with that?
Your Worship, I would perhaps, it would probably need input from operations as well as engineering and possibly planning. So any one of these gentlemen can provide some information on a timeline for getting costs for their particular area for the part that they would have with respect to this project.
Before we get comment, have either of you had a look through this? No. Mike's saying no.
If I may, Your Worship, yeah, just we attended the presentation. That's pretty much my knowledge of it at the moment. So I think we would need, yeah, a little bit of time. If I could ask our Director of Finance, when is the next meeting on the budget, the 29th, March 29th. And a meeting after that as well. Okay, probably a couple of weeks later. Yeah, so we got about a month to do it. Yeah, I would say that staff would be willing to meet with the PDBA, set up a meeting with potentially 3 departments to go over what the proposal is and what the $210,000 would cover and what sort of the timing. I notice it says from 2017 to 2020, so there's probably a rollout, not all at once, but over that time period. So we'd be willing to meet and talk about that, to give council some information the next time. I don't know if we'll be able to meet for the next, but certainly in about 4 weeks at least. Yeah.
Thank you. Any members? Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So with regard to the wayfinding, I actually sent out a request to community members just to get a feel for how they felt about this expense, as well as how did they feel about actual wayfinding. Unfortunately, I didn't bring that folder with me, but I received about 12 responses back. Not one of them was positive. Basically, their responses were, for the most part, we have the technology. People can find their way into Parksville. They find their way to the park. If they're hungry, they find their way to get something to eat. They've been doing that for a long time, so a need for wayfinding doesn't seem to make sense in this world of extreme technology, cell phones, maps. There's a tourist bureau. People who travel, and I can say I've done a lot of traveling, and I don't go looking for wayfinding kiosks to get around. I do that before I get there. I do my planning. That's how people get to Parksville. They plan to come here, and then they plan to do the things that they do while they're in the community. So because I haven't received any positive feedback from the community, I won't be supporting this, and I would hope that we would listen to what our community has to say. I don't know if there's anybody sitting here who might want to speak to it, but I know that I didn't get it. No one said they thought it was a great idea.
Councillor Burton.
Thank you. I'd like to hear what staff have to say with regard to the other implications, but beyond that, this is part of a downtown revitalization plan that has been in place since 2006. The revitalization plan has received, I don't think it's received enough attention over the years. I think this is a first step forward with regard to paying attention to that. And beyond the wayfinding, I'm wondering if it's maybe not time to take a look at the whole document as a whole and start to prioritize activities that are identified within that document, start to look at responsibilities for the various things that are within that document, rather than picking at things piecemeal. I'd really like to look at the whole plan, maybe in a separate meeting, and see how we can start to address the needs of our downtown core.
Councillor Patterson, do you want to make a comment?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think I echo a lot of the councillors around the table that I'd like some staff input, but like Councillor Burton, I have always wanted revitalization in the downtown and throughout the Parksville area, from the entrance to the exit. So this is just one step that, and like Councillor Burton said, I'd like to maybe let's have a session on revitalization in the near future and revisit some of the plans that we've had.
Okay, Councillor Rhodes.
I'll move referral to staff. I'll speak to it.
Go ahead.
The reason that I refer it to staff is because of the unknowns of the future going forward. I didn't mean to reopened a debate about whether or not wayfinding or the wayfinding project that's been proposed is a good or a bad project. I think that this group's worked very hard under the direction well, not certainly the direction, but under some guidance from the revitalization plan that's in place, and they've done an awful lot to make this happen, and this is their attempt at the downtown revitalization. And, you know, don't leave it for me to do it, because I don't know what to do. For me, I merely raised the issue because I want to know how much additional cost it's going to be going forward and where you're going to do what you're going to do. I liked what I saw. I thought it was expensive, but you know, you pay for what you get for what you pay for, and I didn't mean for this to be to revisit the concept of it, because as I said in the beginning, I support the concept. I just want to know what the price tag is at the very end of the day. And so I'd like you to support the motion to have the referral to staff for them to come back and okay, I'll revisit later.
Well, thank you. And I recall vividly the meeting. I took notes, and I remember the consultant saying that this was definitely would definitely be an assist for revitalizing the downtown in relationship to what wayfinding does and how important it is. So we could find that out. Anybody have any other comments before I call the vote? No? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. I'm wondering at this point in time, because we have PDBA representatives in the audience, you know, I think these budget meetings should be more interactive. Does anybody from the PDBA want to make a statement at this point in time? I mean, there'll be other opportunities, but so come to the microphone, please, and turn it on. And I believe you know something about this topic. I believe.
Thank you so much for considering this tonight, and thank you for the motion. Just wanted to point out that this isn't PDBA's program. We did it together, and the city helped fund it. So it's the City of Parksville wayfinding system. And since you helped pay for the consultant, there's no reason why Mike or Vaughn can't just pick up the phone and talk to Stephen. He's working for all of us. That's my only comment right now. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you. Okay. Before I get into discussion, can we hold it till we go through the page and we'll come back? All right, go ahead. Sure, yeah.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I trust that you already have in your package on your agenda a letter that I sent regarding the Parksville budget, and it was to do with the PDBA system. Did you all get that? Is that in your package, in your agenda? I'm just trying to save time here, so I'm just not going to reiterate what I already said. So if you already have that in your package, you know that I, as a person here, has offered my support for the PDBA system, and based on the fact that all of us, even myself as a candidate in the last by-election, all committed to downtown revitalization, and the downtown revitalization has been going on for years and years and years, and the talk about it, but very little has happened on it. Now finally the PDBA has come up with a very strong plan to try and revitalize downtown Parksville. And the important thing is it's the Parksville infrastructure that's going to benefit from this whole thing. It's not just the PDBA, it's the Parksville infrastructure will benefit. So it is actually going to be an asset to our community. So my only comment is that really that there's, we had the talk earlier on anyways, or the council did anyways, about how much that this was going to cost, $210,000, and I believe Councillor Oates brought up the figure of, I believe, was it for every $100,000, was it, am I correct, Mr. Councillor Oates, that it incorporated into a 1% increase in tax revenue? Right, so this would equal, the $210,000 would equal a $210 or a 2% tax increase. Is that correct? Oh, right. Right. Okay. So roughly 1% per 100. So my only point is that I feel that there's other places that the budget, as already provided, here could be cut to allow for the implementation of this, because it is, as we say, it's $70,000 times 3, so it's only $70,000 a year. I have other suggestions for that, which I'll carry on later. I'm just saying, as far as the PDBA is going, I believe that it deserves full support at this time, and we can't delay anymore, because we've all been saying we're going to do it, so it's about time we got off the pot and did it. They've done a lot of work on it, and it's going to be good for all of us. And I also have contacted members of my community, and they said, quite frankly, they think our downtown is a piece of crap. And the thing is, it needs work. So the thing is that this is a good system. Let's start building it. Let's all get together behind this, because we really need it here, because people that come from out of town, they shrug their shoulders. The wayfinding system is a well-researched system. I think they've done a great job. So I believe that they should have our support, and we shouldn't delay it any longer, quite frankly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I also want to point out to members of council and everybody else who's here that the PDBA would be contributing each of these 3 years at what, 30? Is it $37,000 or $30,000 a year? 30? Yeah. So that would round it out to 100,000. Yes. Go ahead, Delay. There was an extensive presentation last fall, which resulted in this document being passed out. No, but I know. But at the last, it was a budget meeting where this came up, and yes, public was here, and at that point in time, the PDBA informed us that they were looking for $70,000 a year. Was it a council? I stand to be corrected. It was a council meeting. No, they certainly brought forward the amount of money at that time. I recall it. Yeah. 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 Okay. Thank you. It'll be done. Thank you. Okay, I don't, before we discuss, we have requests for RCMP officers. I see that the Chief of Police is here this evening. Mark, could I invite you to come down? Because I know there's going to be some questions. And I really envy Mark, because he's the Mark that carries a gun. And you're going to go to a meeting, you got to be carrying a gun. So welcome. So, members of council, we have a request for $61,000 for a half year in 2017, and two RCMP officers from 2018 onward for an amount of $244,412. So this is the first time we've seen this. This hasn't been brought to our attention before tonight. So does any member of council have any questions for the Chief of Police? I know I do, but I'm going to defer to council first. So Councillor Burton and then Councillor Salt.
I'll just start with I guess, an obvious one. We are a shared detachment between the Regional District of Nanaimo, Parksville, and Qualicum Beach. Have you made the same presentation to Qualicum Beach and the Regional District of Nanaimo?
No, I have not.
Okay, thank you. Are we
Councillor
being
Salt.
asked to shoulder the whole load then? Is that, sorry?
Sorry, so this basically came up at a staff meeting last Wednesday, I think, and basically I was just bringing up the attention of the city, and I just marked down a couple of things here. So for the Oceanside RCMP, we've seen a definite increase in calls for service in the downtown core of Parksville. We're responding to more calls of mischief, which includes cause disturbance, theft from vehicles, panhandling. We have issues with drugs being used and seen in public buildings. We are now arresting people with warrants out of Alberta, Kelowna, Vancouver, just to name a few locations that are now staying in the Parksville area. We had a male smashing out windows of a business here in the downtown core last weekend. Another transient person was arrested for break and enter at a construction site. He also had warrants out of Alberta. We had a transient male dealing drugs, and he tried to bear spray the police officer when he was arrested. No one that was arrested over the past couple of weeks here are from this area. So this is a huge increase of calls for service for us dealing with these people that are coming through and they end up staying here.
And summer hasn't started yet.
That's what we're worried about. So we're also looking at training more guys on bike patrol, and we want to put as many bikes as we can in the downtown core here at Parksville.
Thank you. Councillor
Salter.
Please stay there. Councillor Salter and then Councillor Beale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have two questions. I was actually going to ask the same question with regard to the regional district, but will you be going to the regional district to request any assistance from them?
Yes, I will.
Okay. So this isn't actually the end amount. This could change.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And my second question is, I've been noticing in our budgets, actually since 2014, we've been including a $75,000 for prisoners. I'm wondering, how many prisoners do we have on average per year in Parksville?
In the range of 3 to 350, 365. A prisoner a day, let's say.
About 300, so say 350 average.
Average.
Does that sound okay? So what's the cost per day then for a prisoner?
If the cost is calling in a guard. It's the guard that we have to call in. We have no prisoners in our cells. There's no one working there. So once we have a prisoner that has to stay over for court, if I arrest somebody on Friday night, he'll stay all day Saturday, he'll stay Saturday night, Sunday night. He won't go to court till Monday morning. So we've called in a guard for 5 shifts. Huge cost for us here.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Beale.
Thank you, Your Worship. For some clarification for me, in the ask for an RCMP officer half a year, okay, I get that. The request for 2 RCMP officers from 2018 going forward, is this in addition to the half-year add-on? So as in the request for the remainder of the year, that officer then is in the numbers after that. So the request at the end of the day is actually for 3 RCMP officers added by 2018? No.
2 officers total.
So one of those 2 officers would already be here from the half year 2017 if that is approved. Is that correct?
That's correct.
We had a discussion, I'm going to move around the table to Councillor Oates and Councillor Patterson in a moment. We had a discussion a few weeks ago about the highway patrol. Would any of these officers be involved in highway patrol? You said you only had 1 on highway patrol for this area. Would this help out with that too?
So I only have 1 municipal traffic member. He's not a highway patrol member. He's a municipal traffic that deals with the traffic here. And that's, yeah, sure, we will put him anywhere we can. If we get extra bodies, but the watches are so short with all the calls we're dealing with here in the downtown core, it's going to be a battle to try to put him in traffic. And
do you have you got a running tab on how many calls you're getting now in the last couple of weeks? Just ballpark?
I'm saying close to 7 to 10 extra calls for service a day.
A day, okay.
Little things from, we've got a gentleman sleeping in the ATM. I've got a guy sleeping in front of my business. Can you come and get him out of here because I'm trying to open up my business? Little things like that we weren't seeing last summer. Even I'm talking to the members that have been here for years and says we haven't seen these people or these type of calls in the last little while.
Okay. I'm going to go around the table. Councillor Oates and then Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. It wasn't that long ago you were here before, and this wasn't on the radar at all. this notion of 2 extra officers because of the extra activity. So I'm wondering if this is just not a blip, because it came upon us rather suddenly. When you were before council before, there was no mention of this whatsoever. This wasn't an issue. And now, in a month, 5 weeks, it's an issue that is going to cost the taxpayers of Parksville $250,000 going forward. I'm just wondering, I don't know, that seems awful quick for me for the need of the detachment to increase, and we not get any even mention of it in your previous visit here.
So I just want to keep in mind here, the last meeting we had on Wednesday, there was no request. I did not request any other members. It came up in the meeting saying we're getting numerous calls, and it came up saying, how many members would you like to make ends meet? I said, give me 4 members, which is not going to happen. And then we decided, well, let's go down to 2. But I'm not asking for, like, I need specifically 2 members. I'm just letting the city know that the increased calls and the type of people that are coming into town here now is increasing our workload. And this will continue on if the way it's going right now. And the summer is just approaching. And who knows and how many people are going to end up staying here again. That's all I'm saying.
Follow up?
Just for clarity, it was portrayed to me that it was a request from the RCMP.
We'll always take more bodies.
Councillor Patterson, and I'll go back around the table again. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Staff Sergeant. And can you tell me how many officers are in your detachment currently?
We're 38.
And how many of those are those all RCMP, or are those municipal, like, work for the regional area of Oceanside?
Well, it's Oceanside area, yeah. Qualicum, Parksville, Nanews, Arrington, Coombs.
So those 38 officers look after that whole area.
That's correct.
So my next question is, when was the last time that an additional officer was added to your force?
No idea.
Okay.
My recollection, it's been quite a while. I don't think we hired anybody in the last several years from my experience. I'm looking at you, the tenor of it.
So we're due. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go around again. Councillor Burden, Councillor Salter, and then Councillor Beal.
So, this troubles me, the increased activity, because it seems to primarily be in the business area. I know that there's been a series of break-ins in the industrial park as well. And you say that none of those people that you're arresting are from this region?
That's correct.
And yet we're being expected to shoulder the cost of dealing with it.
They're coming here. They're staying in Parksville. They now become our problem.
It's a great place to come to. Councillor Salter.
I think that's what happens if we're living in Canada, so we can freely move from province to province. So, I just wanted to say, though, I think I don't disagree with adding to the force. I know what we're doing on council as far as build-out goes, and we're looking at more densification. So with that comes more, the population increases, as well as tourism. So, which I'm not sure what kind of tourists these are that are causing trouble, but they're here at any rate. So I don't disagree with an increase in the force. I just would like to see the numbers after you've approached the regional district, and see what, between us, Qualicum, and the regional district, and then look at what the numbers would be. It's not over the top. It's not over the top. So I'm quite open to that.
Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Worship. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about any different approaches or models, and in particular, I'm just wondering how much work is done with service providers in the community. I mean, some of the examples that you've mentioned, I could also imagine outreach workers or mental health workers being involved, and I'm just wondering if additional RCMP members are necessarily the only route to go. Mind you, that may be the only route that you're in a situation to offer. But I'm just curious about what kind of work or plans there are to be working with social service providers to address some of these issues.
For sure, we have to work together. It takes the whole community to solve this problem. This is a social issue. This is going on in multiple communities right now, and we're just getting brought into it. We're now becoming big city problems here. This is what Parksville is now facing. So we have to work together with the social service, with probation, with the hospitals, everything that we can to work together. That's the bottom line. That's it is. Do I say that I need the 2 officers? Of course I'll take the officers. But it's not going to be the officers that's going to stop this flow that's coming in here.
Okay, anybody else got any further questions? I have some for the Chief of Police. Nobody else? Okay, Councillor Beale, one more go.
Thank you. I can appreciate that there does seem to be a real need. I am also concerned about the amount of money that we will be committing to, not only for these next few years, but going forward. And I would like to see how that would play out in our budget predictions over the next years, if we were to go with the 1 or if we were to go with the 2.
One of the things that I've been thinking about as you talk about it, you come with us with a report, break and enters, theft under, theft over, car theft, all of the other issues. Could you come back with a comparison in another, say, month or 2? Because the budget isn't due. What's the drop deadline for the budget? May the 15th? So between now, say, and at the end of April or mid-April, could you come back see how this thing is evolving?
For sure, no problem.
And we could look at some of the stats at that point in time?
Because we definitely hope that our stats go down. Like, we are not in the business of arresting people every weekend. We don't want that. So hopefully.
I can assure you as mayor, and anybody I talk to when they ask me about what's my major issue, as mayor last summer, we spent our summer dealing with these social issues with the police, with the bylaw officers, and it was all summer long. Our staff, our operations staff, had to clear out areas that were overgrown a little bit, where it was a great park, but people could hide in there. They could smoke, they could make fires, they could sleep there, and all that sort of thing. So they spent a lot of time having to divert their time and their efforts to doing that. Now that's been done, but I would imagine I'm really what's the word I want to use? I'm sort of anticipating that excuse me, that this summer could be another similar summer. With now the other kick is with the marijuana. Everybody's jumping the gun in terms of they're thinking that marijuana is going to be made legal tomorrow morning, and it's not.
No, that's not. And I just want to advise you just right now, as we speak right now, there's a search warrant being taken place at the medicinal marijuana shop right now.
Yeah. So, there's that, and then there's the Supreme Court of BC's decision to allow people to sleep in public places from 7 at night till 9 in the morning. And of course, the end result of that is at 9 in the morning, you might ask them to leave, but they come back. So we've had, the last bill we paid was in December for a cleanup near one of our parks where an individual was staying there, and our cleanup was $650 for one person to clean up. And we've hired, if those of you that don't know this, we've hired a hazmat firm because there's needles. We had an employee last year that was stabbed, cleaning up debris with gloves on, and it got stabbed in the hand with a needle, and to this day is undergoing testing for HIV and hepatitis. So it's getting, as you say, we're a small city, but we've got the big city issues that are coming home to roost. So I'm just wondering if this has come up fairly soon, fairly quickly for all of us. Could you come back and at the end of probably end of April, very beginning of May, maybe, and give us an update on what you see happening?
For sure.
This is a trend, and it's a trend that's increasing. Could council all agree with that? I don't see anybody saying it. It's not a resolution, but we don't have to finish our budget until May the 15th. Don't go away, Chief of Police. I got somebody that's got a question. You have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, Mr. Marnish. I'm not related to things, but I noticed in the budget some $43,000 spent on Sutherland Crescent, Sutherland Drive. Was that planned to install?
Can staff? Yeah. Okay. Can staff answer that first question? I can't.
Through your worship, I don't have the $43,000 numbers, but I can confirm that our staff have done extensive work down in the southern area. Number one was to install a fence barrier to help some of the trespassing that was going on, to help deter some of these transient people, and also cleaning up the foreshore area and the trailway numerous times, and also assisting with the residents, attending with the residents, as well as the RCMP on numerous occasions to try to help that certain area. But I'm sorry, I can't confirm how much we spent to date.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Butterworth.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just wondering if Mr. Reitzma is talking about the Sutherland Stairs that's mentioned in the budget at 43.7. So that's for rebuilding. Maybe Mr. Figueroa can go in more on what that project's about. That's a carry forward from 2016, so it hasn't been expended yet into 2017, but he can explain the project.
Yeah, that project, Sutherland Stairs, is shore protection around the stairs. There's erosion happening, and we've done some design work, and we are now trying to get approvals to do some construction there. So that's what that $43,000 is for.
Thank you. So, Chief Pelletier, Chief of Police, I look forward. You and I will have some meetings offline too. We'll get together maybe next week and talk more about this because it's important. And I too am worried. I'm terribly concerned about the upcoming summer months in terms of the folk that are going to migrate here. Why wouldn't they? It's a great place. We got a great beach and all that. So, coming with that can be all sorts of challenges. Yes, Councillor Beale.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to say thrilled to hear about the plan to increase bike patrols. I think bike patrols are a wonderful way to go. Thanks.
Thank you.
Only if you get more officers. Councillor Pat.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you again, Staff Sergeant, for coming forward. At a couple of our different council meetings, I've broached the topic of having a council liaison that could meet, and so that we could have some further conversation that comes around that a liaison could bring forward on behalf of your department. So I'm just going to ask for you to think about that, and then we can go from there. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, and we'll be in touch. We'll get together sooner than later. Do you have another question? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're down to military service recognition book donation request. We don't have what that number is, eh? We don't know what we did last year. Why don't we save that for the next? So continue. Yes, I'm sorry.
We spent $550 last year.
Okay, Councillor Oates, you had your hand up. Councillor Salter.
Okay, so actually I do want to speak to Sutherland Stairs, though. It just came up. And I do have some questions around the erosion control on Sutherland Stairs. And that is, so through you to whoever wants to, Vaughn. So in 2014, the budget was $30,000 for the Sutherland Stairs erosion control. It was removed in 2014, and in 2016, it was $20,000 on one page, and then on another page, it was $25,000. and now it is 43,000. And I'm just wondering, how is it that the numbers are jumping around like this? Like, when are we going to get a number that gets to remain on the budget for at least an entire year? Because these numbers are all over the map, and we haven't done anything because we're still waiting for approval. So,
Mr. Figueroa?
If I may, Your Worship, through Councillor Salter, when the budgets are set, I suspect the early numbers are before we had a completed detailed design. As we go forward and get the surveys done and the field information, the geotech done and the environmental done, we get a better understanding of what all the requirements are. We do our best to try to estimate what the projects are going to be, but certainly these kinds of projects that involve senior government approvals, there's lots of opportunity for them to increase in costs. So we're now down to the point where we've got a complete final design. We know exactly what we need there, something that we feel meets senior government's requirements. We had to add some components there, so right now we're in a position where we're pretty solid with the number, and we do still have to go out for tender for it once we get government approval. So at the end of the day, we're going to really know the market value of doing that work once we go out to tender, but we got a pretty good idea now with a completed detailed design.
Follow-up.
I do have a follow-up, and that is this. When I go over these budgets, I see the numbers changing significantly from year to year. And so when I'm asked to approve or to support a particular project or whatever it is, I'm looking at that number, and I'm looking at what we're told that we have available in our budget, looking at tax increases or not, and recognizing that there's only one taxpayer. And so it's difficult for me to have confidence in these budgets when I see them changing so significantly. Sutherland Stairs is a small example, but there are more, and I'll be bringing them up this evening. And so I'm saying that without having, why could we not have had the correct number in the beginning or something closer to that, because it was not even close. So so that's the thing. Maybe we should have someone do an estimate prior to putting these figures in our budget, because we're approving them. We're approving them by virtue of what we're seeing in front of us, because we have that fiduciary position, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. So it's not just to you, Vaughn, because it's throughout the budget, but it's disconcerting.
But in the overall scheme of things, we're not over budget. We haven't exceeded what's been discussed up till now. Okay. Does anybody want to make a resolution about this military service recognition book donation request, so we can get that over with tonight? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to add this into our budget, that we have the same as last year. So.
Councillor Oates, any? Pardon me?
So the number is $550.
Same as last year.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Your Worship, what we took out last year was a quarter-page ad, and it cost us $550. This year, the cost for a quarter-page color ad is $565, and a quarter-page that is not full color is $445.
So, 565? Okay. You've seconded that, Councillor Oates. Councillor Oates, any further comments? Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Okay. And remember, there'll be another budget meeting on March the 29th. Continue, Mrs. Lovegrove.
Thank you, Your Worship. But with the changes that I've presented so far, the projected general fund accumulated surplus or unrestricted surplus is as follows. In 2017, we'd end up with $6.2 million. the end of 2021, we'd have 3.5 million. The following 5 years, we do start to dip, and with 2024 being crucial, and then 2025 going into the red at that time.
So for the next 5 years, we've got a fairly healthy surplus. Okay, thank you. Carry on.
So that's it for the general fund. Is there any other questions on the general fund before we move to the water fund?
The general fund that we just went over. Yeah, the Rath Trevor Trail development. So what I've noticed in previous budgets was a significant change in that one as well. Just let me find it.
Tell us what the significant, I'd like to know what the
Well,
amount
I'm
is.
getting there, but this doesn't, I've got how many years of this? 4 years, so it's going to take a minute. So in 2016, 2017, so the Sutherland Stairs, I have, or sorry, not Sutherland Stairs, Rath Trevor Trail. On page 4 in the 2015 budget, it was $536,000. In 2016, it was $500,000. We're looking at $497,600 right now in 2017. So,
What page you on?
this is page 5 of what we've got right in front of us. I've got page 4 of 2015, $536,000. I've got page 1 of 2016, $500,000. And then, of course, there's the Rath Trevor Trail, which I'm assuming is different than this because it's over $1 million at page 3, 2016.
Mr. Butterworth.
Thank you, Your Worship.
And I can give you
Through to the councillor.
if you want.
What you're looking at there are the carry-forwards from the 2016 budget. So the 2016 budget for Rath Trevor was $500,000. We spent $2,400 on it. So the $497,600 left over is being carried forward into 2017 from 2016 and added to the 2017 budget because there was budget numbers in 2017. So that's the number you're looking at, the 497.6. It's the same budget that was in 2016. It just didn't get spent. Only $2,400 got spent. So the remainder monies is being carried forward into 2017.
Okay, so, and it was $536 in 2015.
It wasn't spent in 2015 either. So in 2015, the amount spent was $36,000, so there was $500,000 remainder, and then $2,400 was spent in 2016, which leaves $497,600, and that's being carried forward. So it's going down every year and being carried forward, but there's also money in the second year of the program because it is more than $500,000 to do Rath Trevor Trail and build the bridge. So.
Okay, and so I also have a question with regard to the hovercraft. So the hovercraft site erosion was $78,000 in 2014. It's $138,400 now. How did that?
So that one, again, was, the number was bumped up in 2016 to cover the project, I believe. And there was $22,000 spent in 2016, and what's being carried forward is the remainder of the budget.
Well, that wasn't the budget, though.
So there's no new money being added in the number you're looking at. The $138,400 is the remainder of what's left over in the 2016 budget, and that's what's being carried forward to 2017.
Okay, because in the 2016 I had $85,000.
It was bumped up at a meeting for the amended budget, I believe. Mr. Figuera needed more money to finish that project, and it was bumped up by council, approved by council for the amended budget.
So it's my understanding that we're waiting for approval to do erosion control there.
If I may, Your Worship.
Mr. Figuera.
Sorry, if I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Salter. Yes, we are currently in a process with senior governments. They are reviewing our application to be able to do the work out there.
Okay. Okay, carry on, Mrs. Ludlow.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Yes, Mr. Butterworth.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I may, before we move on to the other funds, would it be appropriate to ask if anybody in the gallery has any?
So, yeah, okay, thank you for reminding me of that. So what we've covered so far, we're going to be getting into the water utility fund and the sewer fund. Any questions from the audience on what we've just covered? And come to the microphone, because if you're in the audience, it's hard to hear from here. The microphone, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, and staff. I've got a number of questions. So, after the water and the sewer fund, that's the end of it? Or are you going back to the general?
I'll be asking more questions from the audience after the water and sewer fund.
Okay, so I can ask some questions about the general budget now.
Sure, why not?
No major questions, there are no tricky questions or anything like that, but I went through the budget, of course.
Would you if you're referring to a page, would you refer to the page in the item? So that
well, I only have this one here, which I went through, but the first question, in the 2015 audited financial statements, that was literally signed off by the DO Finance and yourself. And I noticed that there's a 5-year contract now to KPMC in Victoria. And I noticed on the 2015 audit statements, there's no signature. It's just the name of the company. When I go back to 2014 and 13, before that, Gorham and McLean, they always affixed a particular name to of the auditor. Is that a change?
Can you answer that, Mr. Butterworth?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll have to check the website. It's perhaps that the auditor's signed report isn't on the website, so I'll have to look and see.
It is on the website. I checked it, and it just shows your signature, of course, for the city, and then KPM P or GC LLP. There's no name affixed to it. If you go to 2014, 13 beyond, it is one of the offices of McCormick and McLean. So I just mentioned that. I also would like to mention, I don't know what the philosophy of this council is, but when you talk about hundreds of thousands of dollars to be spent on local improvements, there's a levy to the business community. You promote local business, yet there's a 5-year contract for the financial audit out of town. People that don't pay taxes, that don't spend money here, that don't support local businesses. And for $1,000 or $2,000, I think that cannot be revisited now, but it should be taken into consideration that you have local people, they live here, they pay taxes here by the thousands of dollars, and yet I think the budget's about $22,000, $23,000 per year for 5 years. I have some difficulties with that. Secondly, Stanford Place, is that and the like, are they tax exempt?
Yes, they are.
Yeah. I referred to an article in the PQ News earlier this year, whereby it said that a Chinese insurance company, and I'm not saying anything about the Chinese, in fact my daughter-in-law is Chinese and my 2 little grandsons are half Chinese actually. But they are in the process of buying a couple of high-profile places like Stanford Avenue. They're tax exempt. Why would we support?
We attempted to try to get that overturned.
Yeah.
But the provincial government were adamant they're tax exempt, and so, that's because of their affiliation with Island Health in terms of having patients that are under the auspices of Island Health, if you will, that go there.
It's hurting, that you have an outside, it doesn't matter if they're Chinese or Russian or whatever, Trump, but that We are supporting, provincial government, fair enough, but we were supporting a for-profit company, and we are not getting our tax
That was our point in going back to the provincial government, because part of it was for profit, but the moment they got involved with Island Health, they dictated, and I use the word dictated with a capital D, that they were tax exempt.
Fair enough. I just wanted to bring that up. Third point, under the council expenses, the grants and aid, $22,000. Could I get a rundown? The $22,000 is monies that we pay to the organizations, that they pay it back to us in order to pay part or all of their taxes, like we did a couple of years ago, $2,700 with the curling rink.
We could get that list, but I don't think it's listed in the budget. It's just the total amount of it was given.
It's total amount, 22,000.
Pardon me?
Yeah, it's 22,000 going up.
Those are $500, $600, $700, $250, $100,000 grants.
Yeah, well, Mr. Mayor, what I'm trying to get at is 2 years ago, council gave $2,700 to the curling club. They gave it back to the city, but the $2,700, half of that went to the provincial government. So I'm trying to avoid that organizations like the curling club, etc., do they get a full tax exemption?
Mr. Butterworth?
They don't have a full exemption, but we did not give them a grant last year. That was the prior year. So I don't believe last year that they got a grant that we had to pay back.
At all, so they paid the full taxes, is that it?
Well, they don't pay full taxes. They are under the permissive tax exemption.
100%?
No one got 100% last year, they got 100% last year, I believe, but going for this year, the tax exemption's at 87%, I believe, for all the nonprofits. So there's not full exemptions this year because we've exceeded our total exemption allowed.
Right, so if they pay about 13%, half of that, of course, to the provincial government. But you're not giving, if you're giving 87%, the 13% that they pay, half, of course, then goes to the city and half to the provincial government, basically, in round figures, yeah. Now, when you have requests for financial aid or in lieu of or grants, do you notify those various institutions and companies and organizations in advance if it's going to be advanced to the agenda, or is it up to them to just look at the agenda and see if they're on there?
I don't understand the question.
If you have an organization that's asking for a grant in lieu of taxes or permissive taxes.
There's a formula for that, and they have to meet all the criteria, and that's assessed by staff, and then the recommendation comes to council.
I appreciate that, Mr.
To pay it or not pay it.
But do you, council or staff, notify those organizations, or is it up to them to look at the agenda to see if they're being considered?
Or Mrs. Keller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the person asking the question. We notify everybody who is asking to come or submitting correspondence to council of which agenda they will be placed on. For the permissive tax exemptions, it's a bit more formal. There is a deadline and it is presented to council as a whole, but each person that submits is notified that it will be such and such a date that it goes before council.
Yeah, I talked to the MENA organization, of course, in the past, and they were never notified. That's my point. Not being critical, but if you do it to one, I think you should do it to to all, of course.
Could you identify those people that said we're not notified?
It was in the paper.
Okay.
You do a letter to the editor, but only the MENA organization. Remember, they asked for. That's the only one I can think of. But if you do it to one, I think it behoves to do it to all.
Okay, go ahead.
I think we have specific correspondence that was sent to MANA.
Okay, I'm just...
No, you raised it. I believe that MANA was advised specifically that their item was that council would be considering it at their next council meeting, and the response from MANA was, okay, don't worry about it. we're good till January.
Okay, fair enough.
Something to that effect.
Fair enough. So they were notified,
Absolutely.
contrary to what the letter to the editor said.
I'm not sure what the letter to the
It said
editor said.
they were not notified.
They were notified.
That's fine, yeah. I just want to make a point. I noticed that the 2015 audited financial statements under note number 7, of course, and I just want to reiterate that the RDN, School District 69, Qualicum Beach, of course, their employee benefit accrual, the payout of unused sick days, of course, is still at 261. The regional district, school district, and Qualicum Beach Council are at 60 days for staff as well as for unionized members, and 261 days is 130 days. It's at 50% as noted, but 130 days is 26 weeks at 5 days. And since we have Councillor Burden here representing 400 or 500 members of the Chamber of Commerce, I have not been able to find, and having been in small business myself, any business that enjoys that extravaganza. And I, through you, I wonder if Councillor Burton knows of any small local business or other businesses that enjoys that.
Well, first of all, at this table, I represent the citizens of Parksville, and I'm not privy to the benefit packages of small businesses in our community.
I would like to advance that I cannot think of any small business ever, and I've been in small business for 30 plus years, that have such an extravagant payout. A sixth point, deferred taxes, and through you to maybe Director of Finance. Many homeowners own, what is it, 55 years or 60 years, they can defer their taxes. I wonder what percentage of the budget is related to deferred taxes, and what kind of interest rate is charged? Is it 1-2% over prime? Mr. Butterworth?
Yes, we get paid by the government for deferred taxes, so we don't have any. At year end, there might have been a small balance still owing, but the government pays us for that. We don't earn interest. Everybody else's taxes are due on usually July 4th or July 2nd. The government usually pays us some in July, some in August, some in September. Usually by the end of the year, it's almost down to zero. We don't earn any interest or penalties from those ones that are paid by the government late, but we do get them within the year, the majority of them. I think outstanding at the end of the year might be $10,000 or $15,000, which we will eventually get.
So not a lot, because I've noticed in your address to people that they should take advantage of that if it's all possible. So there's not a whole lot of people that do that then. They defer their taxes and...
May Your Worship, through to Mr. Wrightsman. No, there's a fair amount that take advantage of it, but the government pays us. The government holds the loans, not us. So the government pays those out, and so we get those taxes. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but we have, I don't know, 400 or 500 applications, I think, something like that.
Okay. And with your indulgence, Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question about the Innismil River water? That saves me coming back, actually, to the director. I noticed the configuration for the Innismil River water service agreement. Parksville pays 74%, and the RDN pays 26%. Now, when you look at the 2016 population census figures, which just came out a month or two ago, Parksville's population, although the province went up 5.6%, we went up 4.5%, 12,514. And the news now has 6,125. They went up 8%. By the way, Lansville went up less than 1/10%, and Nanaimo went up 8%. Now, the configuration between Parksville and the news is much closer now to 1/3, 2/3. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the director, are those statistics part of a re-evaluation, as the number was 74% and 26%, and the news has gone up incrementally over
I
the
can
last 5
answer.
years.
I can answer that. The deal that was signed stays as is.
So
the percentages remain the same. That's what's in the contract.
So even if,
because the portion of the people that are going to get that water is not all of Nanoose.
If I may, Your Worship, the ERWS proportions are based on, it's not we're building the infrastructure and they will come. We are basing it on the OCP projections, which are typically evaluated once every 5 years at the best. Same with the regional growth strategy of the RDN. They are projecting population growth, and depending on those population growths, that's what you build your infrastructure to. If you're going to build your infrastructure to, that's what the governance of the ERWS is structured around, based on each community's population. So it's reviewed at the best, the regional growth in the OCP, every 5 years, and they do look at census data and other factors coming into it.
thank you to the director. It's just that, as you know, the population growth forecast of the RDN for the last so many years was very optimistic. The numbers were way down, and when you look at the census, of course, they confirm that. And to me, the census is really a true application of what's going on. I just would hate to see.
But in the answer specifically your question, in the case of the ERWS, those figures they don't change. They will stay as is, ongoing, until we build another water treatment plant, whenever that may be. That was the agreement, and that's the amount they've agreed to pay. So that won't change. It won't go up and it won't go down. It'll stay the same.
It will remain, even if there's so many more people in one particular area. This may have an indirect impact, but I've had a number of calls from people that have driven around Rents Road and the new huge subdivision going on there, which is fine. That have had gravel, including myself, by the way. My windshield was chipped because of the gravel that's there because of construction. That's fair enough. I think we have a machine called Elgin, I think, the sweeper who goes there so once in a while. Could some provisions be made that certainly for the weekends an extra sweep is done, paid for by the developer? I don't think it should be the taxpayer, because a number of people have had broken windshields already because of gravel and etc. Just staying there during the weekend.
That's the first time I've heard of it. Staff, have we had any complaints? Mr. Figueroa, no? Could
look at my windshield.
We react on a complaint basis. Mr. Figueroa.
Yeah, if I may. We are and have been working with that developer to ensure that they make sure the street's clean. Well, certainly there are times we can't be out there all the time, but we will continue to work with them to try to make sure that they clean up after their delivery trucks go through. There's inevitably some spillage, but we will continue to work with them to try to make sure that they're keeping that street clean.
It's more the weekends, actually.
Your Worship, if I may interject, point of order. This is a budget, and that has nothing to do with.
Well, I thought if the city sweeper comes, that has a monetary impact. That is it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. I noticed, by the way, that the brand display at the beach, they only have a small pieces now. What happened to the big pieces?
Pardon?
What happened to the big pieces displaying the brand? The brand coming and the.
It's a new organization that's taken that over. I don't know where that would be, but I know there's something coming up for the brand. There's a whole list of festival activities, and I think there's an expert coming to town on the brand geese. There's going to be a lecture at some point in time. I haven't been told where it is yet, but that's another addition.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mrs. Lovegrove, if I don't see anybody else from the audience, yes, Mr. O'Brien.
I'm still
On
Doug
the budget.
O'Brien.
On the budget.
On the budget,
On
and
the
I'm
budget,
still Doug
thank you.
O'Brien, and it's on the budget point that was brought up earlier about the splash park or the water park that you've already presented. 1 point only. The budget was presented in the request for proposals, anyways, on the Parksville website as the new and improved splash park at $250,000, which I found out tonight, the Lions is going to pay $100,000, which leaves a balance of $150,000. So I have to admit that I was a little surprised that this amount of money is going to be, has been approved and allocated for the splash park, and the RFP has already gone out for the new and improvements to be made to it. My question is why I was so surprised is, number one, is working on the number that we talked about earlier, the balance that would be for the city of Parksville at $150,000 easily equals that 1% tax increase that we're all trying to get our taxes down, and everybody's making lots of noise about it, but the thing is that that exceeds that 1% figure that I clarified earlier this evening. So I was kind of surprised, since we already do have a water park, splash park, and yet this is going to be the new and improved model. Can
I stop you there?
Yes, go ahead, Mark.
The reason we have to do this is because Island Health have told us that we've got so much time to change that because it doesn't meet the health authority new regulations. So we've been forced again, like the water treatment plant, we've been forced again by Island Health to do that. That comes directly from directive from Island Health that this water park has to be more efficient in terms of the safety and the quality of the water.
Interesting for Island Health to suggest that, once again, how much money we should be spending, but that seems to be the norm of late. Then let's redirect the comments to the fact that, number one, it's kind of unusual for a water park to be in a location that actually has a beach, less than 100 yards away from where the water park is. We have a very beautiful beach. As we know, our community park is a gem, and the beach is incredible, and people swim there all the time. So the water parks, as I understand it, it came to be in places that weren't readily accessed or in the inner city to beaches and so forth. We happen to have a great beach for swimming in, and we also have a water park, which is all well and good. But the problem is with this RFP that's gone out now, is they're saying that, and some recommendations should be made that there is at this time, no design should consider connection in the future to a future cistern. Now, the cistern, of course, is the one that's going to take the water, all the wastewater. It's all the water that comes out of the water park, and they're going to take the cistern, perfectly fine idea, and irrigate the fields. And they can use it on the goose poo field. It would be just perfect for it, because the thing is that there's a lot of irrigation that gets spread there every summer. So the thing is that the cistern could be put there. And yet, this RFP says they're not even considering at this particular time to put in a cistern to collect all that wastewater. Not even considering. They're considering sometime in the future, but they're saying for this RFP, not. Now, I kind of think that this is kind of putting the cart before the horse here. Maybe we should have the cistern in first. And the other thing that's coming up, which is, and I'll comment very good, is that the operations manager and his assistant has asked for from BIU, a community park upgrade plan. Fantastic idea. I think it's great. They're going to do a great job. Really all about it. But I really think that the water park should not even be touched until at least we have that report back from the BIU students. It would be very timely. It's going to be a great report. But the reason they're going for RFPs right now. But my biggest problem of all, without the cistern there, is please can we consider the fact that on the RFP it says the water uses estimated currently is 75 GPM, gallons per minute. 75 GPMs, that's what's used. That's 4,500 gallons per hour. Let's just say that's used only 4 hours a day. That's 18,000 gallons per 4-hour period. 18,000 gallons of water that's going down the drain, not going into a cistern, not getting rededicated into an irrigation system that could very easily cut down on the amount of irrigation that we use on the rest of the park. It's easily done We are very capable of doing it. I just really believe if we're committed to this water park, then we should at least be reclaiming that water. In a very short time, the City of Parksville is going to realize the cost per every gallon of water that we produce through the treatment plant. We're going to have a very finite number per gallon. It's going to be very definite. You're going to be shocked. If you realize that 18,000 gallons per day are going down that drain, you're going to have a double look at how much worth that water park really is. I'm saying that the cistern should at least be considered if we have to do the water park. If Island Health are saying we can't run that water park as it is because there's a health concern, then maybe it should be shut down until we figure it out. But we're wasting so much water that's going on there right now that it's costing, it's going to cost us all.
I'd get complaints from about 4,000 kids if we shut down the water park, trust me.
I fully get that. And the thing is that once it's built there...
Let's go back to your thing about the cistern. Staff, do you want to make a comment on that?
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. This is a phased project that we're looking at right now. Currently, there's many things in the motion right now. There's a current out on BC bid. We're looking for the equipment. That's the RFP. If we don't get ahead of that right now, we won't be in time for the fall to be constructing it, so it'll be ready for the summer of 2018. So we want to ensure that our costs are certain before the end of the year for the equipment. That's what the RFP is out right now. For the cistern, that's always been envisioned. We've had, there's several cisterns that we're envisioning down at the community park. What we're trying to do as part of the community park master plan is review where best put those cisterns are in conjunction with the future infrastructure, such as a playing field, such as a future concession point, or it's whether it may be. So it's not conflicting, that underground cistern is not conflicting with Beach Fest or any other activity or any other users that want to be in that area, so we need to study. What we're doing with the actual water park is pre-plumbing it. When that cistern is in place, it'll be ready for it, so we're not wasting water. So again, there's lots of things in motion, and we're actually phasing in that project. We have a partnership, a big partnership that's come to the table, and that's the reason why we looked at upgrading it. We've got other funds, revenue sources coming in to look at the water park, because it's one of the main attractions for children in the community park. It's one of the most recognized in BC as a water park. Therefore, that's why we looked at doing it additional. When you're doing something like that, or you want to update it, we have equipment that is no longer in compliance with safety standards. Plus, we have water. Once you touch it, it has been essentially grandfathered up until the date. But once you renovate it, you have to go through proper permitting in Island Health, and that requires additional.
The water park closes when? Labor Day?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Opens when? June?
We're looking at June. After, well, it's definitely after the May long weekend is what we look at.
Right. So you're saying basically the Island Health is coming down on the City of Parksville due to safety features, safety attractions at that park, Mr. Squire, or is it just to do with not adequate backflow prevention or treatment of that water once it goes down that drain?
Strictly treatment of the water. That's what Island Health is. There's other safety aspects as far as the actual equipment that's in place right now. As soon as you want to do any renovation to that, your different safety standard, which is completely independent from Island Health.
Okay. I understand that. Thank you for the answers. I just would really hope that in conjunction with it, the cistern was designed at the same time, or in conjunction with it, so we're not just wasting that water. It's just far too much water. 18,000 gallons a day. Okay. My comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I wouldn't look good in tar and feathers if I shut that water park down in the summertime, I can assure you. There's mothers and kids that would be... Oh, yes, Ms. Soffer.
Thank you. I would like to make a suggestion. It's a bit difficult to come in to a meeting like this and then get financial papers, so you don't have any chance to look at them before. up until the last couple of years, they've always been online, on the website, and we can take a look at them. Is there any reason that they're not going on there?
Mrs. Comas, I thought they were online.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Mrs. Hoffer. We do try to get them online. Most of the time we are basically making adjustments right up into the last minute to make sure that we have everything included in the things. They do go online right after, and I know what you're saying, but we are struggling to get them out and get the information to you that is accurate and fruitful. So that's why we have them here as handouts. It's just a process we have right now.
Yeah, I'm just. There is a difficulty to get public opinion if they don't have a chance, and I will come back to the downtown rewrite. I was a part of the first downtown rewrite in '94, I think, and believe in downtown rewrite. But without the facts of what is being asked to have the money spent on, nobody can make an opinion. And when I asked by email about 15 people what they thought about this, because of the age of people, they said we would be so much better if you want downtown rewrite to have some parking where people can park. And that is part of the downtown rewrite and is much more important than signage to make our downtown work. And it is not there for people to park. I think that's all.
And parking is getting worse. Our available parking is getting worse. We're growing, and we've got more people coming to town. Yeah, it's a problem. Thank you. Anybody else before we move on to the water? And yes, sir, come on up to the microphone.
My name is Brad Little. I'm a new resident here in Parksville, about 4 months. Only met one of you before, Councillor Burdette. I am the regional manager for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation here, but I am not coming to speak in regards to any of that, just coming as a citizen right now, and really just wanted to ask some general questions about what I'm looking at here. I realize for the people here, this is probably old news, but it really saves me a lot of time in terms of wrapping my head around the general picture, just to ask a few questions in regards to what's going on, and maybe even you can help me out a little bit. So I'm not really looking for a whole lot of detail here, maybe a more philosophical approach to what I'm actually looking at in front of me, and in terms of where this community's finances are going. I will say, as kind of just a point of reference, the organization I do work for is watching municipal costs explode right now across this province and across the country. It's a huge issue. And so I'd like to kind of just get a little bit of a feeling of where this council and where this city is headed. And so in regards to what I'm looking at here, what I'm seeing on the screen above me is a city that's moving away from running surpluses. Here, obviously, by 2025, you're not going to be running a surplus at all. And if I'm correct, are you the CFO?
But I can give you the big picture. I've been on, I was on council for about 14 years. First of all, we have a short, medium, and long-term infrastructure replacement and renewal program. And we've dedicated over $40 million to that. That was reflected in our audit report of last year. Our priority is infrastructure, because we've been building more and more over the years, ever since I've been on council. We're building more and more, so there's more sewer lines, more water lines, more roads, more sidewalks. And those are things we don't want to have. We don't ever want to wake up with an infrastructure deficit. So that's where the bulk of our tax increases go. The tax increase we're talking about this year at 4% represents $50-some on average per homeowner. And just for the city of Parksville taxes. It doesn't include the RDN, and it doesn't include the school board.
And is that just for my own, if I'm getting this clear, is that a 5-year 4% per year property tax increase? Is that and what year are we in of that?
We're going to be into our second year.
So going into the second year of a 5-year.
Yeah. Oh, this is I'm sorry, our first year. We got way late last year. Okay. And we do that because, as I said, the priority is the infrastructure replacement and renewal program. That's the number one item that we look after. Because you know as well as I do, if you come from that organization, that the big problem in Canada is the infrastructure deficits. And we don't want to have an infrastructure deficit long term. We're a growing municipality. We've gone from what was it 15 years ago, 10,000. We're up to 12,500. Ultimately, we're probably going to get bigger. We had about a greater increase in population since the last census was taken. We're reaching, when we get to the perfect storm is going to be that when we get to 15,000, we're going to have to pay 90% of RCMP cost as opposed to 70% that we pay now. And we're very fortunate to have a great firefighting force, which is a volunteer firefighting force. How long we're going to be able to maintain those, because the volunteers turn over on a regular basis, and the fire chief's here tonight, and they do a great job of training and keeping firefighters for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. But after that, a lot of them move on. Some of our firefighters have been picked up as regular firefighters in cities like Vancouver, Calgary, and you name it, Nanaimo, all over the place. So that's another perfect financial storm. If we ever lose the capacity to operate with a volunteer fire department, you know, go figure what that would mean. And we haven't gone there because we've been pretty fortunate to have a really good system going with that. I would like to say, as mayor and as a former councillor, there's no frilly stuff. There's no nice to have. Our community park, our big revenues here come from tourism. From the months of April, May through to October, tourism is a big factor here. The tourism industry brings in probably somewhere in the $70 to $80 million. So we're proud of that, and we have all of the elements that make tourists want to keep coming here, like the community park, and we're developing more and more walkways. We have our waterfront walkway, which is very popular. You heard the conversation this evening about the water park. I mean, these are very, what happens is grandparents come back with their kids and their grandkids. It's an awesome thing. You go to the park in the summertime and you start talking to people, and whether they're 80 years old or whether they're 8 years old, they'll all tell you that my mother and father brought me here, and it goes on and on and on. The other thing about Parksville is that in terms of the other businesses that stay here year-round, aside from tourism, and we're getting more and more into year-round tourism. The shoulder season is getting more and more busy. We've never had a large company like a lumber company or whatever kind of a company that employs 200, 300, 400 people who give us that boost. Our companies are small, medium, and large. Not large companies. Large companies are over 20, maybe 20 or 30 employees. But these are all people that are creative and innovative, and they manage, a lot of them are high tech. They manage to survive and do a great job through their creativity, innovation, and hard work. And that's basically, in a nutshell, what we're all about. We don't have any big companies that help us with a big tax infusion, or with a big amount of employees that can 300, 400 employees. We've never had that. We've never had that. We live by our creativity and our innovation with our small businesses. And a lot of them are service businesses. And you can talk to the executive director of the PDBA when you get the chance. She's here tonight. Tell you more.
Yeah, and naturally with my job, I get a pretty good familiarity with the business community relatively quickly. Now, I'm aware of the water treatment facility. I believe that contract was awarded to Napit Construction, something in the neighborhood of $22 million. And is there anything else in the offing right now? Like I said, just in terms of looking at a community where property taxes are going up, surpluses are going down. Obviously, there's money being put aside to be spent. Obviously, infrastructure is the obvious thing here. Is there something other than the water treatment plant?
There's two things that are coming up that are going to affect us in terms of taxes, but it's going to come from the regional district of Nanaimo. The first thing is that Island Health are going to be building a new tower, a new patient tower, and I believe a new cancer center in the Nanaimo Regional General Hospital. We, as Oceanside, will have to pay 40% of that, and that's going to be big bucks. I think the project is estimated very embryonically is estimated at being somewhere in the $300 to $400 million. The other thing that we're going to be affected by is the sewage treatment plant, which is here in French Creek. There's going to be a complete réaménagement, a complete reorganization of the sewer treatment plants, and that's going to cost us some money.
Is there some kind of earmarked amount of money for that project?
Well, we don't know exactly roughly what it's going to look like, but we'll talk about the sewer fund in a moment. But we don't know exactly when that's going to happen. It probably within the next 4 or 5 or 6 years. The hospital situation in Nanaimo, we had a presentation because Parksville sits on the Regional District of Nanaimo board, and they came to us a couple of years ago and they talked about 300, 400 million, but they haven't decided, they haven't set a timeline on when that's going to happen. So we're at the mercy of other people that are doing their planning jobs, and they'll come and tell us when they're ready to do that. Hopefully we'll get enough lead time that it'll give us an opportunity to contribute funds to that. And we'll have to look, that'll be reflected in not in our city taxes, but it'll be reflected in our RDN taxes.
Yeah, very familiar with the concept. Actually, I spent 3 years on the sewage file in Victoria, which I would describe as a national disaster.
I wouldn't want to be in that position for love nor money. Mr. Floaty still around?
Mr. Floaty, good Lord. No, he shouldn't be. The only positive I can take from my involvement in that was that we managed to get the treatment level upgraded to tertiary. They were originally going to do a $783 million plant that was still secondary treatment. In other words, all the toxins in the water were going to continue going in the ocean. But it really, the whole thing was a disaster. I was actually very happy to see with the water treatment plant that was awarded to Napit Construction, who was a player there. I didn't like the way that contract went down in Victoria, and definitely looking forward to a redo. If I may ask just one more question, just a quick one. How many members of this council sit on the RDN?
Pardon me?
How many of you here are part of the, like, if it's set up the same way as CRD, how many of you from this
Just
council?
one.
Just one? So yourself?
That's myself.
That's
normally it's the mayor.
And so at a meeting of the whole, how many people are at the table and how many votes does Parksville get?
Oh, it's a weighted vote. I think we get 3 or 4. I don't know. Not very many. We could get outvoted by the city of Nanaimo any day of the week and twice on Sundays.
Yeah, it was the same thing.
What I do want to tell you too is that I've had a talk with one of your representatives out of Vancouver on a number of occasions, and
Jordan.
We've got, I think so. We've got roughly $40 million set aside for the infrastructure replacement and renewal program, and we update that every year. And really that's our focus, because if you look at the, you know well as I do, what the infrastructure deficit for all of Canada, it's in the hundreds of billions of dollars. And we don't want to get caught in that position. And one of the things that I told your representative, and I don't think he liked it very much, but I'm the type of individual that I don't believe in 0% tax increases. I simply don't believe in it, because infrastructure replacement and renewal takes no holiday. And these things are, they're inanimate objects that break down. They either break or they get old and they become dysfunctional, and that's never, never, never going to stop. So whether it's a small earthquake or whether it's something else that happens, another act of God or whatever, we can't slack off. So when people say to me, give me a 0% tax increase, I'm talking personally now, I've never agreed to that, because I don't know what the figures are going to look like. And I would maintain that because of infrastructure, only because of infrastructure, I'm not talking about frilly, I'm not talking about nice to have, I'm talking about infrastructure. I don't think we're in for anywhere that gives a 0% tax increase, for the simple reason that years ago when I was on council, we had an infrastructure deficit, and one year we had to raise taxes 8%, because the engineering staff said if we don't do this, our infrastructure deficit is going to get further behind. So I'd like to talk to you sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sit down one-on-one, because it's a really interesting phenomenon, you know, and we take it very seriously.
And I do look at a community like this that, you know, as you've said, you put $40 million aside, you're running surpluses. You know, I use Oak Bay as a comparison in regards to sewage treatment. You know, that's a community that spent 20 plus years not putting anything into their infrastructure, and now the bill is, I mean, people don't really realize how big this bill is going to be, but anyways, thank you very much.
I have a motto that says you pay now or you pay later. When you pay later, you pay a hell of a lot more.
I was going to say, it's more expensive later.
Thank you. We move on to water utility, folks. We good with that?
Excuse me.
It's up there? Okay.
Sorry, Your Worship, but we're having
not there?
some technical difficulties right now with the equipment, but I can read along. Everyone has a copy of the presentation.
Yeah,
if
we
you would
do,
like,
yeah.
I can just read along for you.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Okay, in the Water Utility Fund, the adjustments, we added the 2016 carry forward projects, and maybe I should just explain a little bit for those who don't understand what carry forwards are. Carry forwards are the amounts from the projects that were either not started the previous year or unfinished from the previous year. So we carry forward the budget monies that was there in the previous year so that we can complete the projects without any adverse tax effects. We revised the opening balances. And again, I want to bring your attention to the accumulated surplus changes from the 2017 to 2020 provisional financial plan. The actual accumulated surplus opening balance for the water fund came in at $7.9 million. We previously projected an accumulated surplus opening balance of $8.5 million. So we actually had a decrease of $640,000 in the water fund in our accumulated surpluses off the start. So the projects carried forward from 2016 to 2017, there's not a lot in the water fund. Operating, the flushing maps were brought forward for 18.5. The capital, again, these are mostly projects that were either just commenced or were not started yet, and they total $871,850.
I'd like to ask a question of Mr. Squire, if I might, at this point in time, given the bleak outlook for the projected water fund surplus. If we were to get more money, would these figures be impacted? If it's a big if, but if we were to get more money, Mr. Squire?
I guess I would defer that to the Director of Finance, but certainly more revenue source coming in would definitely help the overall reserves. With some of these projects, it would definitely help.
Mr. Rietsma's fault that he spoke too long? Rietsma, I'm sorry, I apologize. It's your fault.
Sorry for the delay, everyone. Okay, so the changes to the water fund, again, user billings, we reduced the amount coming in. 2016's actuals were lower than budget, so we reduced our budget amounts. So conservation is working, so we have to reflect that in the user billings that are coming through. Flushing maps were moved from the mains flushing area to minor capital, and $2,000 were added to that for that particular project. And again, the capital is mostly moving projects out, some to 2025, some to 2021, and again, the revenues associated with the funding for those projects. So based on those few changes, our surpluses start off with $2.5 million in 2017 and end at 2021 at $152,600. The next 5 years are in the red, and we will be monitoring this very closely and hoping we can correct this way before we get there. So that's the water fund. Are there any questions on that?
I'm sure the answer is yes, but I just want to hear it. Have we factored in things like the potential development of the property at Despard and the Alberni Highway? Have we factored in, and this goes for taxes too, you know, I hear the 4%, 4%, 4%. I don't personally buy into that, okay? I do buy into the fact that a zero tax increase is the wrong thing to do, because I think that we have to continue to make sure that our infrastructure is funded. But I want to hear the amount of consideration that's given to growth and in that growth to ensuring that we maximize the assessed value on each piece of property within the city.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Burden. The model we use does have a population growth factor built in, and it's been in there for quite some time, and it looks at our population, and we try to predict out when we're going to reach build out and when we will be reaching 15,000 and 20,000 and so on. And the inflation factors in the model look at the population growth as well as inflation and try to take that into consideration as we move forward. So the costs increase, and hopefully the surpluses increase as we go through as well.
But does it take into account, the assessed value on, let's say, the Parksville Beach Resort property right now next to the beach club is probably at its absolute minimum? Does it take into account a maximum assessed value through development on that piece of property and others in the city that are like it?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the councillor. Our model doesn't take into account specific developments. It's a 20-year model, and so we use basically a general assessment increase based on the population increase, and also a general business increase based on the population increase and new construction. It's factored into our new DCCs that we predict to be collecting, as well as new assessments. So I don't know off the top of my head, but I think the number's around 9 million in new business assessments in every year of the model. So if you multiply that by 20 years, that's 180 million. And I think it's around 18 to 20 million in new assessments for single or for residential as well, and a little bit of institutional, but not much in there. So it's factored into every year in the model, but it's not a specific development. To try and do each specific development would be virtually impossible, because you don't know what years they're going to come in, and then you don't know what years are going to be lower. So if you have high one year, you might have nothing the next year, or when's the next deficit or the next recession going to happen. So we just use a standard amount based on our predicted build out and our population growth.
Well, just one more quick one. So are we still running at about 75% residential, 25% business, commercial? Is that still where we're at? Oh, it was many years ago?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So moving on to the sewer fund. In the sewer fund, we changed the rate increases to 3%. They were at 5% for the 5 years. We have now lowered them to 3% for the 5 years. And we added the 2016 carry forward sewer projects in. We again revised the reserve fund opening balances, and the changes from the 2017 to 2021 financial plan for the accumulated surplus itself. The actual came in at just over 3 million, when we previously projected a 2.6 million surplus in opening. So the increase in our opening balance right now is $425,000 greater than it was when we last presented it to you. Few projects were carried forward in the sewer fund to the tune of $676,000. And again, the changes in the sewer fund are capitals that are moved out. You'll probably notice that it's the same projects and all, so we try to keep the projects all together. So if we move out Moss Avenue in the water, we also move it out in the roads, in the storm, and in the sewer. So it might look like a duplicate, but it's the different components of that project that we are moving out to the same years, so that is all together. And based on the changes, our projected sewer accumulated surplus will end 2017 at $2.75 million, and in 2020 we'll go down to $1.752 million. The next 5 years for the sewer fund are still pretty healthy. We do have a little bit of a blip in 2025 where we decrease under the $1 million, but then it comes right back again the following year. So that's it for my presentation. So are there any questions?
any questions on the water and sewer utility funds from anybody in the audience? No? Okay, going to go back to the agenda. And staff, you'll come back for March the 29th with another report? Yes? An updated report?
Yes, Your Worship, we can come back. I'm not sure if there's anything council would like changed in this budget for us to bring back. At this point, I don't know that we've heard any changes to it.
I haven't heard anything, unless, I'm sorry, yes?
Your Worship, we're adding in the advertisement, and we're bringing back information on the wayfinding that may change costs at that point in time.
That means. Anybody else? Councillor Oates?
Yes, on the agenda, there's a couple of items there. I think procedurally we need to have motions to receive them, I believe. And I also, since the last time we met on this, there's been several pieces of correspondence that have come in from different people, different suggestions to things about...
I've got that. I'm going to bring that up now. You're talking about Mrs. Hahn and...
Then I'll wait until you're done.
So, yeah, and there'll be an opportunity at the end of this information. First of all, we have a correspondence from Marilyn Hahn regarding the Parks Department staffing levels. And it's, I need a mover and a seconder to receive. Councillor Salter, seconded by Councillor Oates. All those in favor of receiving the letter, thank you. Does anybody have any follow-up to Mrs. Hahn's suggestion regarding summer students? Okay, I'm sorry, yes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just curious, looking forward, addressing to Mr. Squires probably with parks and operations and maintenance. And I understand that a fair bit of time was taken up for the parks employees this past year doing the work in the Wrens Road Park, for instance, in Mark's Nature Park, and perhaps in some other areas. And I'm just wondering if now that work has been done, is it foreseen that with the existing staffing levels that we have that are available, are we able to get to some areas that maybe it weren't possible in these past year or two?
Yeah, through Your Worship, the answer is yes. Last year we were essentially behind as a result of trying to react to some of these instances. As you mentioned, Wrens Park was one of them. If we didn't act, that would have ended up in a different situation where it would have cost us more in the end. Same happened with Mark's Nature Park, and then moved on to Sutherland. So we were certainly behind on the highway last year. This year we're very conscientious, and as a result of efforts last year, we're in a better position this year to address the highway, and we're very well aware this is Canada 150, so we want to make sure everything's looking clean and green before the festivities begin in the summertime. So we do have the resources right now to maintain it. Just a comment on the students. If we were to entertain the students, our current agreement with the collective agreement with the union is our students are to stay in the parks, centralized in the parks. So it would involve some additional, we would have to go back, labor management with the union and talk about that. And there will also be quite additional extensive training with the students because they're working right adjacent to the highway, which is a dangerous situation, which is we do a lot of orientation with our staff in regards to that.
I'll send Mrs. Hahn a short note if somebody reminds me, just telling her that it should be different this year. We should, based on Mr. Squire's comments. Okay, I have on my agenda here the advertising sponsorship of military service recognition book, and we've dealt with that. Pardon me? Oh yes, that's right. I have a motion. I need a mover and a seconder to receive the letter. Councillor Beale, Councillor Burden, to receive. All those in favor? Thank you. That is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so just prior to adjournment, I want to know, I'm going to go around the table. Does any member of council have any additional comments or suggestions? Councillor Oates, you had your hand up first.
Yes, in addition to what was provided in our package tonight, we were also provided via email some suggestions with respect to the budget, which I think they should see the light of day. So I'm going to start by, I'm going to make a motion so that I can speak to it. I move that staff provide a report to council on the feasibility of the City of Parksville providing a biannual yard waste pickup for residential properties.
Do I have a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Beal. Discussion on the motion.
The reason why I put the motion forward is that the request came from a citizen. I'm not sure if there was any response went back to him or not. It seems to me that it should be a service that we may be able to easily provide. I know we don't provide residential waste pickup, but we do have a parks department, and I'm wondering if that's something, given the letter that we received from Mrs. or Mr. Adams, I believe it was. That person made some very good points about being a senior in this town and the difficulties with getting rid of yard waste. We pride ourselves on being a town in bloom, and our yards and you know, our residents take pride. And I'm wondering if this might not be a service that we could, as a city, that we could, an additional service that we could provide. And should we choose to do that, what are the logistics involved? What are the costs? Is this going to involve the purchase of new vehicles and hiring a new manpower? But is there a way, well, come back and tell us how much it would cost and if we were to do it twice a year.
Okay, are we okay with that? Any further comments? Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Oates, for bringing that one up. I also noticed that request. Now, I did note in the budget that there is an amount for chipping. What I wasn't clear on, because I am aware that there is a chipping program coming up fairly soon. Actually, it takes place in March and April, whereby residents can put out woody-type materials for chipping, and I understand that that's contracted out. What I wasn't clear on is whether the amount in the budget does that pertain only to that spring service, or does that include additional chipping for the city?
Fire.
Yes, through your worship. The chipping program as it stands right now is only once a year. Several years ago, or probably 7 years ago, I believe it was twice a year, in the spring and in the fall. And the budget reflected that. That was part of the budget cuts at that time with that council. And right now it's only currently once a year.
Mr. Burton. I'd like to talk to you again sometime. So, give me a shout. Okay, thank you.
I'm glad that Councillor Oates' motion is only to ask staff for a report, because then we'll be able to fully discuss the merits of the current waste program that's available at the transfer station and why we'll be needing an increase in taxes to relate to the increase in service that's being provided to the citizens of Parksville.
Can I call the vote on that note? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. Anything else, Councillor Rhodes?
There's several things. Also in that package of correspondence we received, there was a request with respect to sidewalks on Craig Street. I would imagine that's part of our future infrastructure upgrade program. Is somebody from staff going to respond to that person and let them know at what point that that particular upgrade that they're requesting is planned to be done, if it is planned to be done?
Mr. Figuera?
Yeah, actually, I can speak to that a little bit. If the correspondence is passed along to engineering, we'll be able to contact the person and identify when we think we're going to be working on that.
I'm only speaking for, I received an email I'm hoping that someone is not sending an email, hoping that one of us is going to address it, respond, and it hasn't been responded to. Because we got these emails on got this on the 13th of March, and it's a collection of emails from the 16th, the 18th, the 21st, and Mr. O'Brien's on the 7th. So I'd like for someone to respond to that. And then there's the one from the person about the senior center, about the notion of creating a senior center with some sort of social enterprise there. I'm just raising it so that it sees the light of day.
There is a senior center, is there not?
Yeah.
Beal? Oh, no, I'm going to leave you to last. Councillor Salter, okay.
I was just going to speak to what Councillor Oates has brought up with regard to the senior center. What they were discussing was moving that senior center into the building that they're putting up for the seniors. So they were talking about perhaps, changing it. That's what they were talking about. So yes, there is a senior center, that's correct. But they were actually talking about making a change with that.
Councillor Burden? You have no comments. Thank you. Councillor Beal, I'm going to end with you before we...
Just on the senior thing, the email that I received, it talks about building a new facility. It talks about building a new facility, and these are the different ideas that we could put in there, do this, that, and the other thing. So...
Was that sent only to you?
No.
Why didn't I see it?
I'm just having a recollection. I believe that particular letter referred to building a seniors, similar to Stanford Place, on the property next to the Parksville Community Center. I don't think it refers to a social
Could you forward
center.
that? I don't recall seeing that, so if you want to mind, let me know about it.
There was a series of emails that came, or a series of letters that came in an email from Ms. Tardif.
Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I do have an item, new business, and it's a request for a resolution regarding a leave of absence. And in accordance with, and this is in relation to Councillor Powell, in accordance with Section 110 of the Community Charter Act, a member of council is permitted to be absent for a period of 60 consecutive days or 4 consecutive regularly scheduled council meetings unless the absence is with the leave of council. Councillor Powell has requested a leave from council as she is participating in the provincial election campaign as a candidate for MLA. Therefore, I would like to move the following: that Councillor Sue Powell be granted a leave of absence from council effective immediately until Monday, June 5th, 2017.
I have a seconder for that. Discussion on the motion. Fairly straightforward. Councillor Oates?
Just in a matter of logistics, who would fill Councillor Powell's various appointments?
It wouldn't be filled, as far as I know. Could Mrs. Comas?
Unless the mayor appoints someone to attend in her absence, or someone has the availability to do that, there wouldn't be somebody attending her committee meetings for that period of time.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. I don't have anything else. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. We have a council meeting on Monday night. We'll have another budget meeting on March the 29th. So on that note, if no one else has any other comments or any other motions, I'm going to call for, I need a mover and a seconder for adjournment. Moved by Councillor Beal, seconded by Councillor Burton. We are adjourned. Thank you.